Good morning. How's everybody today? Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. So we start off with a little gap down. Not surprised after the run into the resistance area. I guess it got. There goes Killer. Um, Actually, she wouldn't bite a soul. She sounds terrible. Anyway, um, prices ran from that 50 you can see on the spiders up to the area of the unfilled gap. There's an obvious place there to the left and began to make the turn at the end of the day on Friday. And as you can see on the 5-minute chart, it started lower, it's been trending down. So we should I look at, where it's currently trading, where the low is, and we see it came down to 414.50. It's this line that I have here. And you see how these bars are overlapping each other right there. So you're going to find why prices bottomed out there, began to turn anyway. But you can see, where the hell is it? Right here, this little congestion right there. That's what stabilized it, that little area. So it's always about support and resistance and looking to the left, the way it turned up there. There's just nothing there. So it reached a significant point and it stalled. Now, it hasn't been able to make much headway, but it's the beginning of an attempt to turn. Hasn't gotten above a pivot high on the 5-minute. It's below the moving averages and they're getting tighter. So, at the open, we start to see real interest, I guess, measured by a pickup in volume, right? Rather than just overnight trading. But just take note, there's an unfilled gap down here in the area of 412, your reference points. And should it get down there, of course, the further it gets down, the more this move off of the low begins to get neutralized. And, historically, this is a relatively normal move after a break like this to come back up off like that. So we'll see where things end the day, whether it's red and down near here, but it's in an area where historically a sell setup forms. And why should a sell setup form? Because it violated the uptrend. It was going sideways. You remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about things had to get tightened up, and they did. And they flipped back and forth until they broke out, and that failed, and it broke down, and it traded under these pivot lows. And it's a significant area because it went sideways for about 3 weeks or so. So leaves that congestion overhead. If it makes the turn, well, this will become a pivot after today, at the completion of today anyway. And so we've got 3 bars to the right, 3 bars to the left. This will become a pivot. And then we recognize that as a new reference point of support. However, now that it's violated the trend, part of the thought process we call it is, well, that could be a stopping point. But if this is truly going to start going lower, right, this was the fifth rising 50 MA was the obvious reference point for institutions, it'll break below that. And, maybe down to here, but we'll see, what happens when it gets there, if it begins to build support. So, we're in information collecting mode. And so part of the information that we do have is that this is no longer in an uptrend. And it was a relatively serious break of the uptrend. And it's retraced to where sellers should show up again. And they have. And so on a short-term basis, a little stabilization, step by step. So then we go to other markets. Well, let's talk SPX. Now that we have those reference points and a high point in the gap fill here, we'll start deciding about spreads, and there isn't much premium up there. So on the way down, there is. So the question is, how far away can you get, and what support is there? So this, just going by where the spiders are, they're down around here, which isn't very far to this congestion, and there's a big open interest at 41.25. So yes, below 4,100, McGraw, I feel comfortable with that for today, because even with this historical break, retracement, just the historical pictures that are planted around different parts of my brain, wherever they might be, right? Different names, that those pictures do not communicate a collapse on the first day of the turn. Right? So the first day of a turn historically tends to be choppy and keeps you, off balance, so to speak, because, the buyers here, they don't totally give up, and the sellers there, that looking to get their money back, right? These pictures are what people did with their money, and they really didn't have, any reason to think that this couldn't go higher, with this break low and a bottoming tail. And look at this bar breaking the low and recovering, man. If this isn't like a suck job of just totally screwing people, well, I mean, who screwed them? Other people, right? But just news that comes out, and when we talk about the inflation and all that, so on and so forth. But this is what we call a failed pattern and a shock. So now you've got, people that could get their money back, and that's the thinking behind, why it should reverse here, and it is, right? Yeah, Joe, I try to say things in pretty common sense, basic sentences as to what I think, right? And like as I said with the other chart, does it hold here? Does it begin to build support? Historically, the pattern is it breaks lower, and goes down to the next level, and that's all well and good because the weekly time frame, there's nothing wrong with it. And then, as we look at the weekly time frame, we've got a bottoming tail bar, that broke the lows and it came back, but it's a range expansion bar, which was a big red bar before, it became a bottoming tail bar. So this certainly could end up with a sideways chop over a period of time within this uptrend. Right. So you see the resistance there on SPX and the support. And that's why I said, below 4,100, selling a spread below that, you've got this large area with the big open interest. Then you got a pivot low, and you got another pivot low, which is a little below 4,100. So when you look at an area and say, well, look, there's no absolute, but it's a whole number. There's reference points there. And if it falls from here to here, that's a big move. And it's likely that it'll bounce up off of there. So, you know about credit spreads. And if you don't, join us on Wednesday, which will make it perfectly clear what they are and why they're traded, and, other option strategies we'll talk about. But Wednesday at 12 noon, MT Live. So forth. It looks like lower, but I don't think it's going to go significantly lower. I mean, on an intraday basis, coming down into that area is relatively significant. But as far as the daily time frame goes, the weekly will be an inside bar. So, all right, YM, you can see trading inside the range, coming up to resistance. Just kind of, actually, it doesn't look bad on the 60-minute chart. Meaning, uptrend, hasn't violated any major support, lower high, lower low, like a bull flag. Got pivot high, so it's creating resistance, and there's support right here. Question is, will it break down below 34,000 today? And if it does, it opens up the door to the void below. And Qs, and see, so this is more of the pattern that I'm talking about that could unfold as far as what happens on SPX in time. New high, failure, break of the pivot, retracement into the 20 and resistance, further breakdown and retracement. Now, does it hold here on the next leg down? That's what we'll be looking for, meaning let's assume that SPX spiders go down and that becomes a lower high and it breaks down to make a lower low. And one of the clues that we'll be looking for bottoming action will be, does the NASDAQ begin to show relative strength? Does money begin to flow into tech that is already beaten down? So where this maybe becomes a W bottom, And so that's going to play out over the coming week or longer. So we'll see what comes, as we always do, day to day. The weekly chart doesn't look so bad here. And it would be a perfect spot for it to begin to stabilize. All right. Okay. Russell, what a mess, right? That's the technical term, right, from the MTS manual. What a mess. New highs and break and failures and lows and breaks and back and forth. But, an easy way to recognize such a mess, moving averages being a visual aid, they're intertwined like a bowl of spaghetti through the middle of the prices, just like that. And you've got pivot highs and pivot lows opposing each other. Those are the pictures that, if you're uncertain and that's part of your checklist, that's it. Oh, it's a mess. Okay? Unless you're an intraday trader, trading the patterns like this, stay away. This is not something for swing trades. Bonds down a little bit. No biggie. Be watching to see if this actually continues to drop, because if it does, all right, these continue to push up, and we know that the equity markets are very nervous about inflation, right? All of a sudden, right? Wood has tripled, steel has tripled, right? And even wood corrected last week, but look at the trend there. Gas is going up. Now, those that read the advisory letter, if you didn't know who McFly was the moron from Back to the Future. And I would say, McFly, hello. So I wrote about it, yeah, copper thing, everything. COPX. Copper, metals, chemicals. What hasn't gone up? So, all right. Oil obviously has gone up. A spike there, reversal buyers down there. Just kind of messy now. Gold, right, looking great. Tagging the 200 now. Silver, kind of grinding its way up too. And what else we got left here? Well, the euro, I'm going to watch for the euro actually breaks out here, and whether the dollar actually breaks down. That's not the dollar. That's the dollar. Whether it actually breaks down. There's inflation and the Fed, with their backs in the corner. If that starts to get worse, if they don't raise interest rates, which they say they're not going to right now, the dollar may start to collapse. And that has a whole lot of other implications. It's about internals. Sentiment's gotten a lot better, right? Coming down through the bottom band here. But if this SPX continues to drop, we want to see this coming down to this 1.2 and this poking down back here again. When they last week I explained how when it drops like this fast, the breath, it's actually confirmation of that. And when it reaches zero, it's usually where the selling begins again. And so far it's only pre-market, but and we see that is occurring. So that grind higher on Friday where buyers wouldn't give up, even an inch or a fraction of an inch, all of a sudden Monday morning, they're sellers. Lastly, the transports. Nothing wrong there. I mean, just, other than the way it came down, which is relatively sharp. I explained in the letter, this kind of setup, it really isn't, while it's in a, in an uptrend and coming towards support, it's not as attractive because the area of resistance is just directly overhead. And so we'll see if this turns into an M. So a lot to keep an eye on this week, as always. That bottoming tail bar with the body up here is a slowing momentum bar, and typically definitely denotes a stall of momentum, but historically a turning point as well. So I think it's obvious based on current things that happened over the last week or so that the market has made some kind of a turn. There's no gray area there. How far it goes, we'll see. All yours, Dan.
All right, good morning. Yeah, even though our letters here, we had a lot of longs in them, it was difficult because of the bias, everything Greg's talking about, two big bars up, 50% retracement after cracking the uptrend, breakout failure. So we made it clear that we need more information today. And we're obviously getting the start of a pre-market. So our longs, I'm going to leave them all posted because when you get a big gap down, they shouldn't trigger unless the pattern is following through. I did give two shorts. We have AYX short still, which looks like an ad under last week's low. All right, so everything else looks fine. Just go ahead and ask me if you have any questions on anything. Whirlpool, I had as a long, and I just said hold off because of the big gap, but maybe we'll get a gap fill. But it's a nice buy setup. Nice buy setup, potent reversal, support in the 20. Mohawk's a beautiful pattern. So see if that triggers. Yeah, McGraw, I changed it because of the gap down. No, McGraw, I did that just to buy us time so people wouldn't go into it as it's falling. But no, we'll totally be keeping an eye on that, checking the premium, see how deep the retracement is. But look at this beautiful pattern. It's a beautiful buy setup, 180 reversal, right? Railroad track 2050. So with a down market, if this triggers long, it looks fantastic. So there's no reason for me to cancel it. Mr. Blue Chip, GMIP. GM, it's range bound, although it made a lower low. I don't see anything to do with that. IP, it is a 1, 2, 3, but it's a 1, 2, 3 after getting extended from the 20. So that's what I don't like about that. I like my mohawk better. I'm not talking about my hairdo. I'm talking about this symbol, mohawk. Thomas, Triple D, Sons. Triple D, yeah, I have this. Okay, so here's another one. Thomas, we have this in our advisory as a core long. Core long, Triple D. We actually bought it the other day and stopped out break even on the pullback, but now it's fine. It's beautiful. It's a little bull flag after a gap breakout on volume. The monthly is a buy setup, so I gave this as a core long, and it's up here pre-market showing relative strength in a weak market. Stopped last week's low and manage in between. VLY, yeah. I mean, you got some resistance there, but as you know, we say the evidence says it'll go through that. Although I'd prefer one where it didn't have resistance there, so then I don't even have to worry about the weight of the evidence. But yeah, that's a nice setup. Thomas LUM. LUM, no symbol there, Thomas. BKD. It is a buy setup. It is, Stephen. And if it takes out Friday's high, yes, it looks totally fine. The only caveat I have for you is it's a deep retracement, so don't expect a new high. That's all. You know, we like buy setups to stop on minor support, which would have been right there. So if it stopped and reversed here, then I would have expected a new high. See the difference? So that's a great little retracement concept, but it's still tradable. It still looks great. I'll even put that in a window. Hell you, man. Yeah, that's a small little bull flag right there. Small little bull flag, buy setup after a big move, 100% retracement. Beautiful weekly, monthly. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Putting that on my list. On my 5-minute windows. Yeah. Look, you got multiple time frame. Well, it is at major resistance here, but bullish time correction. I think this thing can go to 18 bucks on the monthly. I like that a lot. All right, Bernard. Yeah, we're not in this yet. It never took out Thursday's high, and it's gapping down. But Bernard, yeah, but Bernard, two things. A lockup period, yes, is when legally insiders and IPO people, whatever, are allowed to start selling. But more so insiders. I think IPO people, and they're not supposed to, but no, there's no law preventing them. So things start to get priced in, Bernard, ahead of time because that's public information. And whether that's part of the sell-off last 2 weeks, I don't know, I have no idea. But yeah, a lockup period by its very nature, anything that offsets supply and demand, um, so I had this as a put spread over Thursday's high. It had earnings on Friday. And as of now, I'll go through as I do in the first hour, adjusting all new trades that shouldn't trigger. All right, a lot of news on Bitcoin. Bitcoin's down again. Musk tweeting over the weekend. That guy I read is the second richest guy in the world. It's just beyond me why he can't keep his mouth shut. I mean, he's the one that got the GameStop going. Like he gets personal joy out of wreaking havoc in the financial markets. It's like, I mean, you all know what this acronym means, right? That's what I wish somebody would tell him. Just shut up. If you want to sell your Bitcoin, just do it. Why do you need to send a tweet out? And it's like your little kid jumping up and down and getting all excited. Look what I caused. Look what I caused. It really irritates me. So Coin had earnings on Friday. It started off strong, bearish engulfing, gapping all-time lows. That's a stay away. The three, four Bitcoin stocks that move. Look, Mara, I said in the letter, so many things have cracked on the weekly. They still look lower. It's just they're too extended. Riot, look at these things. They're in pain. MicroStrategy is a big Bitcoin. But look, here's a perfect example of what I just said. A number of these were bottoming patterns and they failed. They cracked. The stay-at-home stocks, a lot of them like this, cracked, Zoom, PDOC, on and on. But the weeklies have a lot of room to fall. I think MicroStrategy is going to 400 bucks myself, based on the weekly and monthly, maybe 380, but who knows? But that has room to fall. The problem is how do I get on board? That's the problem. Square, same. Square is a little more institutionally liked, and the pattern doesn't support it as much. But MicroStrategy, it looks bad. I mean, EJH, I have no idea what this is, but IPO on Friday, and it's gapping up today. PCT gapping up at no pattern. That's a nasty downtrend. Rail, yeah, some of these were earnings. Rail down, $6 stock. Yeah, these didn't have many earnings. Oh, another big story today. AT&T merging their media business with Disca here. That's a bullish gap. You know, this beat up sector. And you know, I could tell that there weren't many earnings because CNBC, I have never seen them spend so much time on one story before, like ad nausea. I'm like, enough already. I had to switch over to the cartoon station. I got sick of listening to them about this. They had nothing else to talk about. But remember the DISCA, the DISC, VIAC. So let's keep an eye on all of these. And then AT&T obviously is the culprit, and that's even gapping up. All right, this was earnings ALT, no pattern. Ride had earnings. That's a nasty downtrend right there. Yeah, George. No, I agree. I agree. He's in. You know what? I did have to laugh at his comment on Saturday Night Live a week ago when he started off his monologue or whatever. And he's like, look, I send people to space. I've revolutionized the electric car industry. Do you expect me to be normal? And I said, you're right. You're right. You know, when you're that successful, number two richest guy, you are doing something right. So fine.